why do I care if a social network's on the Fediverse or not? The average social media consumer, why should they care?
Yeah, I don't see any good reason for them to care. As we don't care about our browsing history and where that ends up and many other things.
Welcome back to the Beyond Social podcast. I'm Reggie, one of your hosts. This is the show where we go behind the scenes on how marketers are doing crazy, amazing things. And today, Vitaly and I are talking about X, but more specifically, all these competitors that seem to be coming up every week, every day. We hear Threads, we've got Bluesky, and I'm sure, if you've been in the space for a while.
Too, yeah.
So why? Well, what's going on?
It's interesting, right? So I think Mark Twain, right, said that the rumors of my death were, highly exaggerated, right? So I think
I was a rapper.
Twitter has certainly had its turbulence over the last, 2, 3, 4 years. First with the acquisition by Musk, and then his reorganizing of the company. And I guess a lot of that reorganizing was done very sort of abruptly. How much of that was done correctly or not, nobody knows. He then took the company, or at some point he took the company private, which means that very few people now know much about its performance. His political sort of affiliations or certain things that he maybe talks about online contribute to maybe people blocking or leaving places. There was a time when Twitter, even before that acquisition, started to close out profiles of like Donald Trump and things like that. I think that caused a certain disenfranchisement of people on Twitter. So as I said, a lot of turbulence in that process. And as a result, I suppose certain tools saw an opportunity. Jack Dorsey, the prior founder of Twitter, he launched Bluesky at some point, and then Meta launched Threads. And it also coincides with the push towards what's called the Fediverse, which is sort of like a idea of decentralizing social networks, which loosely translates into there is not a single server that contains all the data. There is not a single owner that owns all the data. So Twitter is not a Fediverse, but both Bluesky and Threads are.
We're going to have to back that up. Yeah. What does that mean?
Yeah, so think of what blockchain does to currency, right? So essentially what it says is that there is not a printing machine any longer in a central bank somewhere in DC. So we're going to just produce the money. We're going to have all these servers owning the money. We're going to track every transaction. There's not going to be any kind of secrets around, where the money goes and how much money is out there. Nobody ultimately owns the money, things like that. So decentralizing, there's no central authority. So I suppose to some extent, decentralizing social networks kind of pursued a similar goal. So somebody developed this system of distributed servers that could somehow join and create these kind of joint social networks, how the data from one social network can flow into another social network, as in you share something in one instance, and then you say, oh, it's only for this private network, or it's for the public. And the data just somehow flows freely. I think that's probably not the main reason why these sort of networks have launched. It could have been a good pretext or a good maybe marketing pitch that they are doing it for this bigger cause of liberating all of us from, confines of private ownership of social media or something. But I think in reality, they are kind of seeing this sort of opportunity with Twitter being perhaps a little too tumultuous and kind of problematic. And as a result, it's kind of seeing an opportunity to steal away some of the user base. I actually looked up some of these numbers before the call. So interestingly enough, so Twitter monthly active users is around 420 million. Threads is probably the biggest threat to them at this point with 275.
Oh.
But what's interesting about them is that apparently their velocity of growth is very high, meaning that they're going to catch up.
Wow.
So they will catch up with Twitter. So Bluesky has been sort of in the mix in news, like 1 million users a day, but they only 28 million.
Wow.
So I don't see Bluesky necessarily catching up quickly or at all, but certainly Threads. So that's kind of the story of why they're here.
Wow. So as a brand, maybe, or an agency considering either offering that service or showing up on Threads and Bluesky and Mastodon and geez,
Mastodon.
who knows what else is out there? Like, should I be on it? Like, what?
Yeah. So overall, what's also so essentially there are like few contributing factors, right? So Twitter, sort of turbulence. You have the development of like federated social networks, decentralized social networks, but also part of, I guess, overall social space today is this sort of disenfranchisement with all the ads, all the paid stuff that's happening within these networks. I mean, it's nonstop ads, right? Maybe one day, I guess, Facebook or Instagram will develop a system of what like YouTube is doing with YouTube Premium, where you can pay and not see the ads. But it's very commercialized space. Not to mention how the ads are being thrown at you, but also a lot of people are posting very sort of commercial content. A lot of brands are posting commercial content. So a lot of ads. So, for example, neither one of these networks, new ones, neither Bluesky nor Threads, have any commercialization built in. So there are no ads on these platforms just yet. So they are kind of freer as a result, I suppose. They kind of feel more genuine, maybe. And as a matter of fact, we've met with the Meta team back in November, I want to say, and they were kind of just presenting their sort of view of Threads and what they perceive it as. They sort of perceive it as a space for very sort of genuine, non-commercial content. We went on there to try it out, and we do see fairly good, relatively speaking, engagement on things that would otherwise not maybe have engagement. So it's easier to get engagement, it appears, on these networks. Community is maybe fresher, more responsive. Time will tell, however, right? If they'll have enough people to generate the necessary sort of traffic or ROI for you as a business. But they certainly seem like no-brainer kind of places to be on. For example, if you're using like an SMM platform, shameless plug for Vista, but again, any other platform that supports, let's say, Bluesky, close to just check another box really for Bluesky, and your Twitter content will go to Bluesky, or your Instagram content will flow to the other network. So it's a pretty easy networks to kind of get on, but they're super young, particularly Bluesky.
Fair. All right. Okay, so Vine, it happened. Twitter decided, hey, let's maybe pick them up before they get bigger and ride that wave. And clearly it didn't work very well. Vine got shut down shortly after Twitter acquired them. You have a sense that maybe there's a chance Mastodon, Bluesky, Threads ends up being like a Vine?
No, I don't. I think Vine was just a total mistake that happened during probably more turbulent times for Twitter. The onset of those turbulent times. I think this one, it was very clear that they, as a company, struggled to sort of innovate and kind of create better ideas. Arguably, something like Vine, they could have just built. Right. They were right in the sense that essentially short videos were possibly the new craze, but somehow they just didn't execute it. But I think, again, it goes back to that sort of dysfunction that caused the acquisition, that caused Jack Dorsey to leave the company, that caused them to now have all these sort of issues. If you remember, Twitter has become so dysfunctional at some point that they couldn't even do things like increasing character counts on messages. All of a sudden, like, out of all the things that companies can do, you can't do something as small as this. So I think Vine was a story of just perhaps some corporate negligence more so than anything else.
and if anything, Meta's got deep pockets. I don't think that Threads is going to be going away anytime soon.
And Threads is showing such great promise at this point. Like it would make no sense for them to kind of drop it. So yeah,
for sure.
And from what I know, also Threads is made, like the tech for Threads cost them almost nothing, because I believe Threads is mostly built basically on the same infrastructure as Instagram. So it basically probably presented them we've met the entire Threads development and product team, and they all basically fit in like one corner of a room. There must have been like maybe 20 people in there.
Wow. For a huge organization like that. I mean, speaking of Meta though, right? Like deep pockets and whatnot, Fediverse, I think is what you said.
Yeah.
And,
Decentralized social, yeah.
What does it stand for, by the way?
Federated universe, I guess. 2 words together, yeah.
Sure, it sounds like a Star Trek thing. Do we really believe that Meta is well, one, going to keep the door or eventually make everything kind of public and open to the world? And then I think probably second to that is, I'm pretty sure they pioneered the whole, we're going to spy on you, take your data and sell it to advertisers, go in front of congressional hearings. Do we think that they're going to keep that not advertisable, non-monetizable?
So both are great questions, right? So obviously, if they are operating on Fediverse, they are, at least on paper, very focused on this decentralization of social. Which would essentially mean that they would need to have quite a lot of interoperability of data, flowing of data back and forth between their networks and others in Fediverse. I do, in our meeting, a summit that we attended, that question did come up. Let's just say that the answer was clearly that they are a Fediverse player. Do I believe it? I guess I don't have any reason not to believe him if that's kind of what they say. It does, however, quite obviously contradicts their business model because it would loosen the grip that they have on the data, or it, at a minimum, share some of the data with others on the Fediverse, information on their users, as an example, right? So I just find that particular item, I find it hard to believe unless they're going to maybe try to anonymize it. So I think that aspect of it is kind of up in the air. I think too, like a regular user, that is less relevant, I feel like, because I think the whole notion of decentralized social really has minimal impact to pretty much anybody, unless you are a freedom of speech activist or a freedom of text speech activist. I mean, it doesn't really impact you too much. I mean, are you bothered by your data on Instagram being somehow utilized for ads back to you?
Am I allowed to say that I don't have a personal social presence?
Okay, so, but I haven't found people that are bothered by it. I think if people will bother, they're just not going to be on social. So
and most people, you ask that question, they're like, "Oh, I've got nothing to hide," right? Like, but I guess like going into that, why would I? Maybe you already answered that. Why do I care if a social network's on the Fediverse or not? The average social media consumer, why should they care?
Yeah, I don't see any good reason for them to care. As we don't care about our browsing history and where that ends up and many other things. I think it's like that type of discussion in a lot of cases. On one hand, it's relevant. It has to do with our freedoms and freedom of privacy. And certainly you see a lot more of it somewhere out in Europe where these privacy laws and restrictions are very sort of heavy-handed. I don't personally have an opinion on that in terms of, I don't see people being concerned about that. This is not your Orwell's, 1984 TV kind of looking back at you. Now the TV is looking back at you and you're happy about it. So, I mean, this is, I think Orwell would have just completely been bunkered by what's going on in the world where you are physically carrying a device with you that has the ability to listen on you. So I think like that ship has long sailed. I think we're only talking about this like if we just want to know why they could have launched Threads without a Fediverse.
Yeah.
They could have just done it. So to me, it feels just kind of like a bit of a marketing kind of spin where using a stack or something has no impact on the user. It doesn't really change the dynamics of the site to begin with. Like, you're using Threads, it feels like Twitter, feels like Instagram.
Sure.
It's basically the same thing. In terms of the ads, this is where I certainly don't think that's going to be the case going forward. They will run the ads on it. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, they're a private company and to make money as any other private company would.
Right.
Why would they create an altruistic social network for what? For a greater purpose? I think they would probably combine both. They will run the ads as well as everything else. So I think from that perspective, by the way, that kind of goes back to the Fediverse. There's no ads in Fediverse. So like once you start adding ads, you're kind of like already on your own. So,
interesting. So is that like a rule to the Fediverse or is it technically
I'm
limitation?
not aware of the ads being Fediverse. I mean, just think about the payments. Like how would you pay for ads that are just distributed? Like, because if you pay and then that ad goes to my network, like, do I get paid too? Like, somebody's going to have to figure out the payment system here. So, but again, no impact to the user. I think broadly speaking, the more fundamental question is, what should the business do here? Should they kind of join these networks? I think this question is really no different than the question that people have: should I be on TikTok or should I be on any other network? Right. I feel that Threads is more likely to be a player than, let's say, Bluesky, but who knows? I mean, if Twitter continues to be as unstable as it has been, Bluesky is going to continue to grow.
Right. I almost feel like there's two paths here, two possibilities for a company that decides to invest in Threads, Bluesky, Mastodon, all of the above. It's either A, they're going to spend time, effort, energy in the recruiting, the strategy, and maybe there's a third in doing all of this. And then one of those or all those networks get shut down, and to an extent, maybe some wasted effort.
Right.
Second one is that they don't really invest much time or energy and do it, like you said, just check another box on their social media scheduling tool, and it just sends it to those extra networks. And if it generates some results, it's all a plus, right? And there's probably a third, which is that they risk it. They take the gamble and maybe it pays off. Maybe these networks are here to stay, and long term, they've got the home field advantage in the sense that they early adopters, they got in, they built an audience. As we saw with TikTok early on, engagement was easier, getting views was
There's
easier.
Less competition. Like, one argument for any new network, whether it's Bluesky or Threads, is that it could be that your competitors are not yet kind of heavy on it, and you'll be the only one in your category where, you know, the competition is not going to be as heavy. Right. So there's always that argument. I think, again, like back to the conversations with Daniel, you wouldn't know until you try. So,
yeah, absolutely.
But I think Bluesky is less of a worry perhaps just yet versus Threads is a more established player with a very solid growth trajectory, I feel like. So perhaps giving Meta yet another lifeline.
All right. Cool. Well, hey, thanks, Vitaly. We'll probably sync up a year from now to revisit this conversation to
prove me wrong.
Yeah, let's see where we're at.
Oh my God, I'm going to record with a lot of this stuff.
Well, thanks everybody for listening. And this is a great conversation. If you're on Threads, if you're on Bluesky, things are working out for you. We would love to hear about your success, what some of the strategies are that you've been implementing for yourself, for your clients. And if you want to join us here in Miami, we'd love to fly you over. Reach out to us, vistasocial.com/podcast. We'd love to have you here. Thanks for consuming the content. Let us know anything else you'd like to see. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.